Remember to hit the record button today because we didn't record yesterday. So, breath here that fills the lower half of the lungs. So, really, in a lot of ways, that's a little bit of a psychological trick, right? It's like, how do we send our breath into the lower half of the lungs? We have to take full inhales. And as we fully inflate the lung capacity, we feel that even into the bottom of the rib cage and in the bottom of the lung tissue start to fill, and we get into some different microcapillaries, and we feel the like power of the inhale breath. So while we don't have to be really aggressive with that inhale, we're using the lungs to their full capacity and feeling the lower half of the lungs expand as well as the upper half. And wanting to take that breath deep enough that we get some of this lower rib cage expansion potential, we feel some of that diaphragm expansion as well. Let's give ourselves just another 30 seconds here. And finishing with just another round of breath or two. Used to have so many on a Monday. And as you take that last breath, just exhale completely. And as you do so, try to feel the lungs completely empty out. Feel the belly contract as you release. And then let's inhale, and we'll bring the knees into a bent position. So kneecaps point towards the ceiling if they're not already there. Let the feet come flat against the ground. And let the knees just start to move a little bit side to side. So just a little bit of lumbar sway. We're not going to be here long at all. This is just going to be a transition, but feel that capacity for lumbar rotation and just kind of note where we are to start class. And then when you feel right, just pick a direction and let the knees fall towards that side. And we'll press ourselves up through seat and into hands and knees, tabletop. And from our tabletop space, let's set those fingers nice and wide, wrist, elbow, shoulder stack. Soften the torso down and note how the middle of the back wants to bow. Likely we have a little bit of additional sensation around that diaphragm, so you can use that as a guide too. We want to stay neutral in that mid body, neutral in the low back. And then just curl your toes and roll back into your down dog. And as you get back into that down dog, first time, press from those finger mounds, drive into that tailbone space. Get all the way into the full depth, and let's just walk ourselves forward. We'll find our way into fold. Coming to that first folded class, check your weight distribution between your feet. Make sure you're balanced left to right, and then sink your head all the way into the full depth of your shape. Note where you're feeling that restriction, or if you're feeling that restriction. And if you are, if you can alleviate some of that restrictive quality by bending the knees just slightly, and then let's inhale and roll ourselves all the way up. So no half lift here, just roll all the way through that flexion throughout the spine, and we come up into a nice vertical mountain. Take those shoulders and externally rotate them, let the palms roll forward. And squeeze into your glutes a little bit here. So we get that posterior chain activation, nice neutral mid body. Bend the knees so hands are going to stay at your side. We're going to bend the knees so you go into like 5% chair. So it's just this subtlest bend, keeping the mid body neutral. And then sweep your arms out, palms up. And as you come to this shoulder height, squeeze the shoulder blades back and then lift back into mountains. Now we have kind of upside down zombie. And start to take the thumbs and just roll them down. So we get this big internal rotation energy, external rotation energy, just a funky external rotation. And thumbs go as low as they possibly can. And then we'll roll the hands towards a more neutral alignment, sweep the arms up and overhead. Feel the freedom across the forearms from that, and then just exhale back into forward fold. Inhale into half lift. Top of the head points out towards the front of your room. Exhale back into fold. Plant the hands, walk yourself back into plank. As you get into that plank, feel that core engagement. Feel the strength in your shoulder. Feel how rooted you can be through your feet. So press and energize back there. And then lower yourself down to your belly. Flip the tops of the feet. Gaze. So go eyes open and look down at the floor. So nose is like touching but not pressing, right? So we're going to lift our head to the point where our nose is touching the mat. There's a little bit of baby cobra energy because we're not allowing the weight to rest on our nose because that wouldn't be comfortable at all. But then I want you to have the eyes open so you're looking down. The likelihood is that the field of vision is blurred there. And that's just because we're so close to where we are. Now squeeze those elbows in and then lift your head just high enough that you can create clarity in your field of vision so that whatever you're gazing at starts to crystallize and we get that little from soft focus into focus rack adjustment. And then relax. Bring some strength into the musculature just above the knees. We'll press ourselves back up to hands and knees tabletop. From hands and knees tabletop, we're just gonna flip the tops of the feet and sink back into child's pose. It's a pretty unusual sequence there to start class, right? We went through a standing shape, we went through a down dog, we've gone through a cobra, and now we've made our way to child's pose for the first time. Looking to feel some freedom in that lower posterior chain or lumbar posterior chain. So as you get back into your child's pose, try squeezing into the glutes here. And as you do that, think about lowering your head as much as you can. So glutes are squeezed, which is difficult. That requires core engagement, right? So I'm saying glutes are squeezed because it requires so much more of that trunk musculature. Really get that and then drop your head and feel the length in the lower back start to come out of just that release of the head. Then use the fingertips or slide the fingertips in front of you if they're not already there. Then we'll use the fingertips to pull ourselves forward to hands and knees tabletop once again. Curl our toes and lift our seat back into down dog once again. And as we get back into that down dog, pedal that out. Think about exploring the depth of your down dog shape in this moment. We'll eventually lift our gaze to the front of the mat and walk ourselves forward and into fold. Inhale your way into half lift. Exhale your way back into fold. Drop the head, completely release into the full depth of the shape. Then drift your awareness to your sacrum. We're going to roll ourselves up so we unfold through that flexion of the lumbar, through the flexion of the thoracic, and eventually through the flexion of the cervical spine. And we come into this tall rooted mountain pose. Roll the palms forward once again. And then we're not going to take the arms up, but we're going to take the thumbs back. So we go palms out more or less. And now we're in this huge external rotation. So much so that for a lot of us, we're going to feel some of this anterior soft tissue really start to speak at us in a way that is not always comforting. If it starts to cramp, relax. But as long as it's not cramping, if it just feels like it's elongating, stay with this. And we're going to lower ourselves 10% into chair. Now, there's a tendency here for the low back to come undone and for us to arch. Keep the core neutral. And then rise back up, palms come together and overhead. I didn't get my camera quite high enough to see that. There we go. Yeah. So fingers come together, index finger guns. We're going to create that and then sink all the way back into chair. So more traditional chair alignment. Squeeze those biceps in towards your ears and push the fingers up like you're trying to elongate that upper posterior chain. So hands are pushing away. We're getting that thoracic spine length. Then break that hand grip and take yourself through forward fold. And inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. As you do so, think about that lumbar tissue that we've opened up, releasing and giving you that length. And then let's slide our left foot straight back into lunge. Left foot lands, we keep that left quad strong. Think about the stability of that leg as you sweep yourself up into crescent. Get into this top shape, stabilize right in the middle of the body, and then drop fully into the shape. Take the arms out towards cactus. As your arms come out towards cactus, squeeze those elbows back a little bit extra, trying to take that anterior shoulder space and make it just a little bit more open. And then we'll bring the hands together at heart center. And then sweep the arms back up into crescent, float the hands down to the mat. We'll step the left foot forward and into fold. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. Slide your right foot straight back into lunge. Push back through that right quad, activate that strong right leg, and then sweep yourself up and into crescent. Think about creating that stability. Then we open ourselves up towards cactus. Squeeze those elbows back for extra space. You see there's a little hinge right at my thoracic joint. Try to keep the core locked in so we don't get that hinge going on. And then bring those palms and elbows together. We just touch, sweep ourselves up into the shape, float the hands down, and we step back forward and into fold. Inhale into half lift. Long, flat back. Exhale back into fold. Plant your hands, walk yourself into plank. Squeeze into that plank shape once again. Get that mid-body engagement. Feel the stability of the feet, the quads, the arms, and then lower yourself down to your belly. Come into the belly, we're gonna go that same shape we were just in. So we bring the baby cobra into the shape so that we can feel the nose just touching the mat, but not holding weight. And we gaze down at the floor and see that field of vision blur. And then lift yourself up until the field of vision clarifies. And squeeze those elbows in. Quads are flexed. Remember to keep that low back protected with glute squeeze. And then release the forehead down, slide your hands underneath your forehead and find that little bit of crocodile pose. So there was a time when the entirety of the world didn't have electronic refrigeration. And the only way that things were cooled was by ice. During this time, these two brothers started this business, ice delivery. And that is the way that everyone got their ability to cool things, to store things, cold storage. They had ice delivered every morning, like we used to have milk delivered every week, every morning. One of those. And so these brothers ran this, well, their father started this ice business, right? They ran this as he started to age. They started to run the business. Eventually he fully retired. They took over and they owned this ice delivery business, completely split down the middle as a partnership. We'll give ourselves just 15 more seconds here. A little bit past your quarter class check-in, but note your low back, note your abdominal space, how the legs are feeling, how that posterior chain is feeling, how the shoulders are feeling. And then we will bring some strength into the musculature above the knees, slide the hands back underneath the shoulders, press ourselves up to hands and knees tabletop. From hands and knees tabletop, curl your toes, lift your seat, find your way back into down dog. Step that right foot forward and into lunge. Stack the tibia and fibia so they run vertical. Sweep yourself up to crescent. Ground your left heel. Roll open to warrior two. If you roll open to warrior two, make sure we're getting that lateral edge of the right leg to roll open and take that space. Really feel this medial line start to open. Make sure you're squeezing into the core so we get that midline stability. And then let's spin our left heel up. We'll come into crescent. Take that space. There's a little more room for the hips. Drop into that. Take yourself all the way back. Press into that left heel. And then we're going to roll back open into warrior two. This is one of my favorite ways to really get the length of warrior two is just come in, come out. Now we have a longer version of warrior two here. Make sure you're wide on that lateral edge of the right leg. Sink all the way into the shape as you squeeze your core. And then spin back up. Float the hands down to the mat and step the right foot back and into down dog. Shift your weight forward into plank. Lift your seat back into down dog. Step your left foot forward into lunge. Sweep yourself up into crescent. Find your shape. Then we roll blossom open into warrior two. Squeeze the core, stabilize the mid body. Get that lateral edge of the left thigh to help you expand. Then we spin back up, crescent. Find the strength and the depth. Push all the way back through that back leg. I should do this with my left hand. So you feel that leg activate. Then we roll back open into warrior two. You can feel how this really puts some strain on their capacity here. Find the stability by balancing the weight distribution between the front and back foot. And then we'll spin that right heel back up once again. Refine this super wide version of crescent. Float the hands down to the mat and step the left foot back into down dog. Shift your weight forward into plank to rebalance. Lift your seat back into down dog. And let's take our right foot and step it forward. So we're going to walk forward, but we're going to cross our legs. So you're going to take your right foot over to the left side of your mat. And then you're going to take your left foot over to the right side of the mat. And you're just going to cross those legs as you walk forward. Just getting a little hip openness until you get to the top of your mat. Plant your feet at traditional two-fist alignment. Inhale into half lift. Exhale back into fold. And sweep yourself all the way up and overhead. Exhale, hands to heart center. Settle the hands at the heart center. Sink your seat back into the depth of the chair. So we have that nice torso alignment, good strong neutrality here. Take your right elbow planted on your left thigh and give yourself this lumbar rotation and then see if you can gaze up towards the ceiling. Don't worry about the ceiling rotation if you don't feel comfortable in the chair shape itself. And then we're going to blossom all the way back up into mountain. Rise all the way back up and exhale your hands to heart center. From heart center, we'll sink our seat all the way back into chair. Remember, it is tailbone back, not knees forward. Shins stay vertical. Then left elbow comes on that right thigh. Give yourself that capacity for rotation. Maybe we even gaze up if the neck, cervical spine is up for it. And then we sweep ourselves all the way back up and exhale the hands to heart center. Okay. Now we have a little fatigue in those quads from that chair sequence, right? We're going to take ourselves back into chair one more time. Shins stay vertical, seat back, not knees forward, and just push yourself forward into fold. The quads are fatigued. The hamstrings are overcompensating. So you might get into this fold and the hamstrings might still be turned on. If that's the case, just bend the knees until you can completely release your head and don't worry about re-straightening here. Just let the low back absorb the work that you've done from those twists. Walk yourself back into down dog. Hands press. Get your weight back. Remember, as we go from forward to backward, there's a desire for the weight to stay in the hands. Bend the knees and drive back into that tailbone space. Come down to hands and knees. And we're going to sink back into child's pose. And just again, let the head release into this child's pose. And as it does so, I want you to feel posterior torso. Posterior torso just gets that length from the head going into this supported flexion, right? So ideally, forehead comes down to something. It can be stacked hands. It can be your mat. Could be a prop as well. And we're going to give ourselves about 20 more seconds here. Really feeling the torso length, and we're lengthening vertically, right? Even though we're in a horizontal shape, we're getting that QL musculature, that quadriceps laborum musculature to elongate with us. When you feel right, when you feel ready, fingertips push forward if they're not already there, then grip into the mat and we'll inhale and pull our entire torso forward to hands and knees tabletop. Stack the wrist, elbow, and shoulder once again, and then curl our toes, lift our seat, and find our way back and into down dog. Let's take our right leg and extend it straight back and behind us. And then we'll step that right foot forward and into lunge, ground our left heel, take our right hand to the medial edge, big toe edge of the right foot, and take that left hand and roll it open for a little side angle. Think about stacking both wrists right on top of one another. Generally, we kind of feel backwards in this space. So it feels like we're taking our hand forward when we're taking our hand towards our hips, but really think about going the direction of the thumb. Usually we need about 2 inches to make that possible so that we can get that full stack. And then we're going to use our left oblique to just bring us right back up into warrior two. As you get into this top shape, the legs are super active because they had to be to help transition. Think about keeping the legs active and dropping into the depth of the shape. So it's just tailbone down into even more quad strength. And then we'll spin that left heel up. We'll come back into crescent. Float the hands down to the mat. Now we're going to slide back into the right hamstring towards pyramid. So remember, you can keep that front knee with as much bend as your hamstring is asking you for. So this could just be a lunge, right? You could push the top of your head out towards your front of your room and then just press back into the hamstring until you feel it turn on. If you need to go a little bit further, you just keep pressing back. Trick is your weight wants to go to the pinky toe edge of your foot. That's going to lift your big toe mound. Make sure your big toe mound is rooted and anchoring so you can lengthen away from it. And then bend that front knee and step your right foot back into down dog. Balance out here. Feel the glutes being your guide to an equilibrium across the hip girdle. And then send our left leg straight back and behind us. And we'll step that left foot forward into lunge. Left foot lands, right heel grounds, left hand to the medial edge, big toe edge. Open yourself up to that side angle. And then think about the direction of your thumb so that you stack those arms. So usually it's about a 2-inch move forward that we really need to take with that top arm. Once you feel like you've got that lateral length, then we can use the oblique to draw us up and into warrior two. We come into this warrior two, legs are super turned on. We're going to keep that as we just drop into the depths. Stay wide across the torso. Stay strong in that front quad. And the right heel spins up. We find our way to crescent. Float the hands down on the mat. Step the left foot back into down dog. And come down to hands and knees. And sink back into child's pose. Hips are pretty open here. So really allow the torso to interplay with gravity and create this space all the way through that cervical spine release. And think about the posterior torso really lengthening. So these two brothers run this ice business in this super clever way, right? They're in New York. They go out in winter and they harvest ice from the Hudson. They just cut out giant blocks and they bring it back into a basement. Right? Ice in the middle of winter is not a hot seller, but ice in the middle of summer is where they make their money. Remember, there's no way to electronically cool things. So they store these huge blocks of ice in this basement of this building they own. And because they have so much ice packed into the basement, because the basement is temperature geothermically regulated, right? It stays cool enough all summer long for them to have ice to sell throughout the year. And because their product is free, they just take ice out of the river their margins are incredible. They are making money hand over fist. Last 15 seconds here. When you're right, when you're ready, fingertips slide forward. We inhale, pull ourselves back to hands and knees tabletop. From hands and knees tabletop, set that neutral torso alignment. Slide your left foot straight back so that the left toe mound can connect and flex that left quad. Slide your right hand to the middle of your mat. And this is going to be the key. Right hand's going to provide the stability here. Some of us will take that right leg and spin it out. Some of us may have the capacity to just open up into this little modified version of side plank, right? It's a side plank in a way that top leg can rotate if it feels comfortable, but it doesn't have to. You're just looking for this lower half medial line opening. So we're trying to get that right groin to experience some space. Same thing with that top arm is side angle. That left hand, wants to go forward just slightly. Stack those arms and then push down in your right hand and try to push that left hand up. See if you can get that posterior chain on the underneath the scapula, subscapular musculature to start to expand. And then I'm looking at you guys on the screen, but you want to have your head so that the cervical spine stays nice and neutral. And then release back down. Take the right hand back over to its side, and we're going to slide back into this modified version of down dog. Right, so all we do, right knee stays bent. I'll fall over while I show this. Left leg stays active and press up into the hips. So the right leg's really not holding any weight, right? You can take that right leg and just release it from the mat. It shouldn't be holding much weight at all. And then we'll slide the right foot forward, and that's the biggest, hardest thing we're gonna do all day. When you're ready, we're gonna slide back into that right hamstring and then push down into that right toe mound, and we're gonna sweep our arms up to the stability of those legs. Now, we've been pretty brutal on our legs tonight, so really make sure you feel enough comfort in that quad and hamstring engagement to take this shape. This can just be crescent, right? And then float the hands just as controlled back down to the mat. And we'll slide that right foot back so that it mirrors the left. And we'll come down to hands and knees. And we'll set that torso once again. So neutral spine, right leg extends back. Left hand comes the point where it is underneath the middle of the chin, middle of the nose. That's our point of emphasis. Remember, you can take that left leg out if it feels comfortable. And then we're going to open ourselves up at a side angle. The thumb goes forward so we get that shoulder stack. You can almost feel how the shoulders just lock in with the collarbone when you come forward to the appropriate point where those arms are stacked. That would be really funny if I said that and then I was looking at the camera and it was way up, but I'm going to assume that it's not. Press down to that left hand and push that right hand up and try to think about the back expanding. So we're creating enough energy here that we get that subscapular musculature to turn on. And then release that right hand down. Take your left hand to its side of the mat. Left leg just stays where it is as we come up into this modified version of down dog. Again, the left leg is essentially holding no weight, right? It's all back into that right heel, right calf. And then when you feel rooted and grounded, we're going to slide that left foot forward. This may take a couple of steps, right? That is a huge hip ask. It is both a lot of room and a lot of control in a place where we don't have a ton of room. And from here, we are going to slide back into the left hamstring, only to your point of comfort, and then sweep ourselves up into this top space. Remember, this can be a crescent, right? This doesn't have to have that hamstring component to it. The hamstring's just not feeling it tonight. You're feeling unstable. Make sure that you seek stability first. And then we're going to slowly work ourselves back down as controlled as we came up. And then we'll step the left foot back so that it mirrors the right. And we'll walk ourselves forward. And this, we're going to do that crosswalk, but left foot first. So left foot to the right side, right foot, left foot, right foot. Eventually, when you make it up, 2 fist distance, inhale into half lift, exhale, release yourself back into fold. There should be a surprising amount of room in this fold. So take yourself all the way into the full depth, experience the length, feel the back of the neck let go. And then when you're ready, let's sweep ourselves up and overhead. And we are going to take the hands to heart center and then take your right hand to your left shoulder. I know I should have mirrored these, and then left hand to right shoulder. So we end up kind of mummy style. And then with the fingers wrapped around those shoulders, squeeze the shoulders back. And elbows are going to lift up and then stay up as you sink into chair. And just keep that pressure of the elbows staying at shoulder height. And then we'll rise back up. Switch our grip, so left arm's in front. We're going to take the right arm in front. Grab those opposite shoulders. Take the elbows up to shoulder height and sink yourself into chair. You can kind of see how much of this lateral edge and posterior chain musculature this turns on. Right? This is just a big ask of our posterior chain here. Grabbing those shoulders is sometimes hard enough. And then we'll rise back up, sweep those arms up and overhead. Exhale your hands to heart center. And sink your seat back towards chair. Strong, stable mid-body here. Seat is back, shins stay vertical, knees are not forward of the ankles. And then rise back up. And exhale through forward fold. Now you have both length in the posterior chain and fatigue in the musculature. So really let go here. Splay your feet out so that you can get as much width and stability as is possible. Let the top of the head completely sink. Let the head get pulled down by gravity into cervical spine length. And then plant your hands and walk yourself back into down dog. Remember that the legs are fatigued, and therefore there's going to be a subconscious shift to push more weight into your arms. Make the legs do the work, right? Even if the legs are fatigued, they're better at carrying our body weight than our arms. And then drop your head and let your head just completely go in this down dog. So you're in down dog, the neck gets long, we take that space. And then bring your head back to neutral. So neutral is going to be ears and biceps roughly near one another. And we'll take our left leg and extend it straight back and behind us. And then we're going to step our left foot forward into lunge. And ground your right heel. Take your left hand to the medial edge, big toe edge, and then slide back into your left hamstring. And then we're going to unfold ourselves into triangle and think about taking that thumb forward until the shoulders and collarbones lock in. So we get that big, beautiful shoulder space. Then press down into your left hand and try to push the right hand up like we're expanding across that shoulder girdle in triangle. Bend your left knee, let your right hand come down to the mat. Spin your right heel up, flex into your right quad. No knee bend on the right side as you take the left arm into twist. Same thing with the arm. Thumb goes forward until you feel that lock in of the shoulder girdle. And then release your left hand down to the mat. Step your left foot back into down dog. Shift your weight forward into plank. Squeeze the glutes here. Lift your seat back into down dog. Till your right leg straight back and behind you. And then step that right foot forward into lunge. Left heel grounds, right hand on the medial edge. We slide back into the hamstring, so we're headed towards triangle. Then the left arm reaches up. We stack those arms, thumb forward until you feel that shoulder girdle lock in. Then you push down into that bottom hand and drive up. And as we push that energy across the shoulder girdle, note how the posterior chain changes, right? There is way more when we're active in this shape. Right knee bends, left heel spins up, left hand comes down, left quad flexes, no knee bend. Take your right hand up, thumb forward until the shoulder girdle locks in. Right hand comes down to the mat, right foot steps back into down dog. Shift your weight forward into plank. Squeeze your glutes, flex through your legs. Lower yourself down to your belly. Nice work. Last time, we're gonna go to that baby cobra where we do the nose balance, blurry weight or blurry vision, and find that stability. Then lift your head just far enough till the field of vision clears and squeeze the elbows in. This will be the last time we're in this shape. So if there's any last little movements or adjustments that your body feels like it could use, offer them here. And then relax and slide your hands underneath your forehead. And just breathe here into this crocodile pose. So for years and years and years, these brothers are just selling off this ice over the summer and just building wealth. And then all of a sudden, one summer, electronic refrigeration is introduced. And the brothers have kind of their first disagreement, at least in relation to the business. One of the brothers says, we should sell everything and invest in this new technology. The other brother says, this is what our family does. We have a business that has no cost. Why would we abandon this? And they end up not being able to come to an agreement. So they separate. They divide. They don't divide the business. The one brother sells his half of the business and leaves. It is no longer a partnership. They're running competing businesses. And this competition creates animosity. When you're ready, your choice. Either roll straight over onto your back or press yourself up and orient yourself how you feel comfortable releasing to your back. So we're either just going straight over onto our back, or if we want to change our orientation, we will work our way through that so that we can be lying the direction we feel most comfortable with or that works best for our practice. And then we have this moment of integration, right? Finding our back, second time this class, but really after a lot of work. I don't know why I made us do so much work tonight. But even though we worked the entirety of the body, right? We didn't leave a lot out tonight. And I think if you were observing this class without all of the specifics of the cueing, you might think this was a super leg heavy class. But where I really want you to feel this is across the posterior chain and the shoulder girdle, and then starting on that anterior shoulder openness where we started class, right? So the shoulder girdle, posterior chain, and then this little anterior expansion settling in as you lie back into your mat here. And we're gonna give ourselves just another 25 seconds to integrate. So this brother that left the family business and heads to electronic refrigeration is finding things incredibly difficult. The technology is expensive. and people don't see a need for it when the cost of ice just isn't that much. When you are ready, we'll bring the knees into a bent position if they're not already there. If they're already there, just press down into your toe mounds and heels, and we'll lift our belt line up into a nice little bridge. Arms can fall out towards cactus or T here. And then release the tailbone down to the mat. As you do so, push the tailbone down and feel the lower side of the tailbone firmly press against the mat. Then bring the knees to neutral. So kneecaps point up, but the feet lift. So you could think of 90-degree bend here. You don't need the 90-degree bend, but it's a good kind of reference point. So we have a vertical femur here. When you're here, the lower half of the tailbone is planted just like it was when you had your feet against the ground. That's what I want you to keep the sensation of. And then start to pull your knees in only to the point where you can keep that lower tailbone fully connected. And then once you're there, you're going to slide your hands behind your hamstrings and push and extend both legs. The key is if we roll back, if the tailbone comes up, we've lost the shape. So you want to make sure we have that low tailbone firmly planted, so much so that there's like a tilt to the pelvic bowl, almost tilting down away from you. And remember, the knees can be bent here. So towards the ceiling does not mean at the ceiling. It's just towards that direction. And then release the feet down to the mat. Take your arms back out to cactus and rock the knees side to side. And as you're swaying here, opportunity to compare and contrast that brief little transitional movement where we rock through this lumbar space early on in class, first 3 minutes. And then the next time the knees fall over towards the left, let's allow them to stay there. So eventually this brother who's in the electronic refrigeration business discovers this secret, right? He has access to all of these ice delivery routes that he's been delivering for years. And he finds out if he can just get one electronic refrigeration device sold into a neighborhood, the entire neighborhood starts to shift around that, right? So he starts offering deals to the first person in a neighborhood. And they buy this in-home refrigeration system. And then they invite their friends over, and their friends see this, and their friends want this new device. And that becomes his key. One in each neighborhood, and they start to sell themselves. And so his business starts to incrementally grow and then exponentially grow. And at the same time, the other brother, the brother who's still in the ice delivery business, started to see his business incrementally decline and then exponentially decline. And so the brother who left the ice business goes back to his brother and he says, you know, I don't want to leave you behind here. I want to offer you the opportunity to buy into my business at the exact same price that you bought me out of yours. But the brothers in the ice business says, no, I'm not changing what I do. This has worked. It worked for our father. It worked for our parents. It worked for us. And I'll make it work now. Remember, you have all of these costs and I don't. And this kind of aggravates both brothers, quite honestly. Thought it was going to be a nice gesture, but it just doesn't turn out to be that way. Both brothers build more tension and resistance to one another. The next inhale comes into your body. Utilize it to bring those knees back to neutral. Let the bottoms of the feet come together and the knees fall out wide. Settle here for a moment. And then press the bottoms of the feet together, maybe with like 15 to 20% energy, so that there is some internal sensation that creates some internal medial line expansion. And then relax, and then bring the knees back together and let the knees fall over to that second side, the right side. And so, once exponential growth gets going, it's hard to stop. So eventually, in-home refrigeration completely replaces at-home ice delivery. And the brother who decided twice to turn down in-home refrigeration is left with nothing. And the relationship between the two brothers that at one time was so solid and so strong that it seemed unbreakable, it seemed undamageable, is also nothing. About 40 more seconds here on the second side. As you feel right, as you feel ready, knees come back to neutral, bottoms of the feet come together, knees fall out wide. The knees fall out wide here. Allow for that bottom of the foot energy, maybe 15 to 20%. Press towards one another. Create that sensation on the bottom of the feet, that sensation of medial line expansion. And then eventually relax. Let the knees fall open and then inhale the knees back up to neutral. As the knees come to neutral, let your eyes close, let your awareness drift within you. Ask yourself if there's anything you might want, need, or desire before we release ourselves into a shape where we can appreciate Shavasana. If there is anything, just move through that. When you feel ready, when you feel like you're complete, let your body completely let go into a shape where you can feel fully and completely relaxed and at ease. So pretty quickly after the brother who stayed in the ice business disappears, his will to exist disappears. And he passes on. And, you know, him and his brother were such a big deal. They ran the entirety of ice delivery in Manhattan for decades. So the newspaper comes out and they ask him if he has any thoughts on his brother's passing. And he thinks for a while and says, yeah, a fixed mind is a disaster. Start to bring some movement into your fingers and your toes. Into your wrists and your ankles. Up into your elbows and your knees. Up into your shoulders. Feel all that work we did. Your hips. Eventually into your neck and your head. And then at a certain point, when you feel ready, we'll utilize the movement we brought into our body to transition from the shape we are in back into a seat. From the seated space, we'll get our spine tall, let our breath get fluid, find our way into some ease and comfort, and let our eyes close. And when you feel right, when you feel ready, we'll inhale our hands together, heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself that we are living in a world that is changing more rapidly than at any point in human history? And comfort yourself in the awareness and the knowledge that you have a choice. You can adapt by design or default and see how that changes your experience. Thank you so much for being a part of this evening's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy Monday, guys. Appreciate the heck out of you being here. Thanks for being here, Rob. Nice to see you guys. Lisa, Skip, appreciate the heck out of you. Everybody who's not on camera, appreciate the heck out of you. Oh, I should tell you, I'll be here next Sunday if you want to recharge. And if you want to do this again, I'll be here next Monday. Love you. Mwah.
Thanks.
Thank you.